Welcome to the channel. My name is Valkyrie over there. It's Valkyrie of the Veil. That's like the more easy English translation of that. Welcome to the page. We are going to be talking about how to that is definitely a decision for you and not me to go through a spiritual initiation, but we are going to be talking about how initiations start spiritually and kind of what to look for, how to determine, is this something that I'm going through? Is this not something that I'm going through? And maybe a little bit of like what you can expect with those beginnings and just like the storylines of initiation. I do have a video previous to this. This is a part of a series. So I do have a video previous to this going over kind of astrologically within your birth chart and within your placements, what to look for and kind of giving you a lay of the land of what to expect within your experience within a spiritual initiation. So if you want to look at that and check that out, I'll put it up in one of the corners up in the video. Super cool. There's also a blog attached to that one about the initiation of the Berserker, very masculine form of magic. So if you're interested in that, very specific path work, very specific. That is a very, very specific form of initiation, but that is available there. So beautiful. Any other updates that you're looking for of offerings are going to be down below. I've got my books, the blog, sessions. I also have card decks, deck of cards that I've made. Let's go into, the information about spiritual initiation. So in my experience, there's a couple of different ways that these initiations can start. One of them is going to be a self-initiation. This one I find to be this one's a little bit more simple because if you're the one deciding to go on a path, you're the one who gets to decide where you're going, how you get there, where are you going, how do you end up there, what are you learning along the way. It's a self-starter. You're a self-activator, you're a self-initiator. It's done by your own hand. There is no help necessarily from other people. We're still humans on the earth, so obviously, the help that you're receiving on a mundane level, but magic is also mundane in my opinion, so discernment for yourself on that. That's true. Initiations, in my experience, they take a long time. They take a long time. They take years and years and years and years of hard work and dedication, and activation of initiation can be very simple. It can be something that happens kind of easily. For myself, I just started studying very consistently. I started meditating all the time. I started practicing all the time. I was I've always been naturally gifted within spiritual things. But when I got a little bit older, I started applying myself to it. And from there on, I didn't ever want to put it down, really. Well, that's not true. There was a period in my life where I did, but we can talk about that in the final video of the series where I go over my own story. Not yet. But it is something within self-activation, initiation. You have to kind of keep yourself responsible to things. It could be any purposes or dreams that you're going after in your life too. That's a form of spiritual self-initiation, especially if those dreams have to do with spiritual things or becoming a certain kind of spiritual person. So that's the first form. Again, a little bit, in my opinion, more simple because it is just you. You're interacting with everything else around you, but it does take time. It takes time and dedication. It's an art form. You're creating your artistry through spiritual learnings and tools, which I think is really beautiful. Another way that you can be initiated is through the ancestral spirits. So this would be for people who have inherited different practices, inherited different structures or systems from those ancestral spirits. Your mother, your father, very directly, anyone who has come before them and your lineages, anything that has to do with the ancestors, anything that has to do with them, good, bad, doesn't matter. Anything that has to do with them, it's very neutral. That inheritance is something that you are offered and you can do with it what you decide, but you do have to go on that ancestral ride. You do have to follow through. You have to go through lots of healing work, lots of understanding. Not that you wouldn't go through healing work within the self-initiation, but you are also an ancestor. So in my opinion, they are directly connected and correlated. Yeah. That's true. So those ancestral initiations, also too, if you come from a specific lineage of practice or specific structure of gods within the ancestors, that can be something that is connected to that form of initiation, or at least it was for me. Not always is God work going to be rooted in the ancestors that you come from. However, God, work, and offerings are always going to bring the ancestors into what it is you are doing. So what do I mean by that? There may be offerings that you're making to gods that your ancestors are not directly connected to, but the offerings that could return to you from that God spirit are going to be directly connected to the ancestors that you come from. Again, good, bad, neutral, however you sit with that. So those ancestral forms of initiation, definitely something to give reverence to, especially dependent upon the type of family that you're coming from and kind of how you were raised. Undoing a lot of that takes a lot of time, and earning that ancestral position usually means that there is I don't want to call it a rising above, but if you're looking at like kind of how kings and queens inherit the throne, sometimes it has to be taken from the parents, and that is how a king rises. Sometimes it is offered to them very simply and very easily, and that is how a king or queen rises. So just discernment on that sort of earning of power and what does that look like, creating a healthy relationship with very healthy boundaries, because everyone comes from a different kind of people. We all probably have people within our lineage who don't like us very much, whether we know about them or not. They might disagree with us. They might not agree with our decisions. So of course, hopefully there's supportive people within that lineage as well. That's just what it is. We all get dealt a different deck of cards when we show up here on Earth. And if you're able to create healthy boundaries and a healthy relationship with that like predetermined circumstance of who you are and where you come from, because we don't really get to control that. We do get to control what we do with it. So keeping healthy boundaries, again, I said that a bunch of times, but it's really true. Keep healthy boundaries with the ancestors in you. Keep healthy boundaries with the ancestors in you. Keep healthy boundaries for yourself, healthy boundaries. Keep healthy boundaries. And create a healthy relationship with them. That will be helpful if you are someone who is in the process or is in inheritance of any sort of ancestral spiritual gifts. That is true. Another form of initiation work is that the spirits could offer it to you. So this could be a god who sees you and says it's time for them to be activated within this position. It could be a mother spirit, a father spirit. There are so many different names of spirits, and there's so many different structures of spirits, so many different structures of gods. There's so many different. The world is so big, okay? There's so many different kinds of that work. So sometimes, in my experience, and I'll share this part of my experience. In my experience, I didn't know I was going through initiation when I started. But now that I am at the very end and like have kind of like finished up a lot of things within those consecrations and within those finalizations, I've kind of looked back, and there's very specific moments in my life where I can pinpoint, oh, that's where that started. I see that now. Okay, I understand. And I've been walking that path ever since. So there are origin points. You get to decide if you walk the path or not. And also, that sort of activation is, in my opinion, it is a gift. It is a responsibility. And also it is an honor to carry that. One of the ways that this can be kind of determined is if you are already giving offerings to different gods, or giving offerings to like a god, just like generally speaking, if you feel called to give offerings to the gods, which I will place a note of discernment here that tricksters do exist in the world, so don't ring a bell that you can't unring, okay? Just take care. Just take care. And give reverence to the fact that there are beings who are much older, wiser, and stronger than you are as a tiny little human who's been around for less than 100 years. So just discernment for however that would work for you. That's true. But if you feel called to create relationships with different gods, that could be a part of it. So just discernment for yourself. And again, like I said earlier, I'm gonna bring it back up, any sort of god work or that kind of like higher spirit work. I don't want to call it just higher though, because we do have like the shadow realms and the shadow spirits too. So it's not just the stuff that's like up in the sky. It does have to be rooted to something, and sometimes those roots are the ancestral beings. So any sort of god work that you're practicing is going to be connected to the ancestors, whether it's you come from a lineage that those gods are connected to, or you're offering to gods that don't come from a lineage that you come from. You're offering to gods and creating relationships with gods that you don't necessarily come from a lineage that's connected to them. That will bring a whole entire different set of like rules depending upon the gods that you're offering to. Sometimes, especially with closed practices, you might not be welcome there, so just discernment for yourself about what that is and what that looks like. If you want to know how a god might respond to you, look at what your ancestors do. That's just a really good rule of thumb, and how you have your relationship with your ancestors, because that will also determine what kind of ancestor are you. So discernment for yourself, because again, once you ring a bell, you can't undo it. You can't, it's so serious. And also, you can't undo it. Once you make the offering, you got to go through it. So, it is very serious. The other way to go through an initiation is to have an exchange with another person. Now, this form of initiation is super strange. It's very different. This could be considered going through the initiation of like a religious structure where you would have to be initiated by a priest or a priestess. That is a form of exchange. You're being offered from the authority of that person this experience of initiation to become a certain sort of person or to sit in a kind of position. So there's that. Within the practice of witchcraft that exists on the world right now, or in the world right now, a lot of the times when we're making exchanges with people, it's not always so religiously bound. Okay, so there could be, if you're practicing magic with other people, if you're doing ritual work with other people, if you're making witchy offerings to other people, if you're giving offerings or receiving offerings of magic from other people. Also, this could be your partners or your partners, people who are connected to that reproductive system and health, because hello, Pluto, love Pluto, also true. Yep. So those sorts of exchanges are going to be, usually it is another magical practitioner who you're going to be making those exchanges with, if you are making those exchanges for some form of initiation. And one thing about those sorts of crossings where there would be an exchange or there would be an offering is that both people, even in the situation of a priest or a priestess initiating someone into being a priest or a priestess, or having there be some sort of like initiatory experience into a seat of power, this is, again, my experience. So both of those people, no matter the position of authority or hierarchy, if there's a crossing and exchange on a human level, then for initiation, then both people are going through an initiation. Even if it is a priest or a priestess who is offering an initiation for a person to become then a priest and a priestess, priest or priestess, I guess, and maybe applicable, I said it, so priest and a priestess, priest or priestess, this other person who did the initiatory work to bring that person up, they're also going through an initiation because they have offered that experience. So no matter where you are within those hierarchy level seat of authorities and powers, just keep that in mind, because if you offer initiation to other people, then it's work. This is especially going to be applicable if you're practicing magic with other people. If you are practicing magic with other people, even if it is as simple as sitting down and meditating with another person. I know that sounds so like ridiculously silly and simple, but it's true, because both of you are now practicing magic together, if you would consider meditation magic, which personally I do. Some people may not, though, so discernment again for yourself. Both of you are sitting down to practice a kind of magic, and you're being initiated into an experience together. So that's the other form of initiation that can happen. In my opinion, one of the more dangerous ways to be initiated, but also one of the more profitable. I don't know if profitable is exactly the right word. It's one of the more, there's more risk, but there also could be more reward. That's true. For that form of initiation, because in the previous video, in the series, I talk about more of like the Neptunian stuff that goes on. So for all forms of initiation, but especially the one that I just mentioned, where it's two people crossing and there's an exchange and then the initiation happens from there for both people, that is going to be more Pluto oriented. So you want to look at your 8th house, your Scorpio placements, and then your Pluto placement as well. That can help you understand, probably there's already been some crossings in your life. Those sorts of initiations may not take a really, really long time. Sometimes they can take weeks, they can take months. In my experience, they do kind of have to cycle in and cycle out with the moon, and there could be some other things that are going on. I work a lot of moon magic, so maybe that's a personal thing. So again, discernment for yourself if that is applicable. Yeah, looking at the Pluto, and then also I guess too, because it's Scorpio, you could look at Mars and in your chart and kind of see how is that prioritization taking place, or like what have you prioritized through that initiatory experience? Were you able to protect yourself? And is there any gain, and what has been gained from it? If you can identify within that sort of crossing of human to human what you were able to offer to them for their initiation and what they were able to offer to you for your initiation, that is a beautiful perspective. It will also allow you with Pluto to mine the gold of the underworld, because you're bringing to light kind of more of the secrets of that experience. So go and, as you need to, check those placements out. And if you wanted to check out the indirect rulers of Pluto, so what Pluto, the sign that it's in, and then what would that sign be ruled by, the 8th house, what is it ruled by, and what is the planetary object that rules that house, and where is it at in the chart. For example, if you have Virgo in the 8th house, that's going to be ruled by Mercury, so you would want to go check out your Mercury placement and see how kind of that plays into it. And then your Scorpio, so the house that Scorpio is in, and then any placements in Scorpio. The house that Scorpio is in, if you look at just our modern structure and what would be the ruler of that. So I'm going to use the example of Virgo again. So say that you have Scorpio in the 6th house, that's going to be Virgo's house. So you would want to go check out where Virgo is and your Mercury placement and things like that of the indirect qualities. I'm always going to recommend that you make the indirectness a friend. Make the indirectness a friend. It's going to be a beautiful practice if you do. That is true. So for this video, that's what I offer to you. For the next video, we're going over more of the tests and the trials and the tribulations, like the hard stuff about initiation, and what to expect within that, and how can that just that area, because initiation is really hard. Again, if you've been through it or you're going through it, you know, not easy, not fun all the time either, but for a reason and a purpose. So it is. So that's what we're talking about in the next video. Kind of how to navigate it, talk about just kind of maybe what to expect, and direct and indirect. That's true. So thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for wanting to learn about this. So if you want to come hang out with me in the next video and learn more about the possible dangers or problem solvings of initiation, then I'll be there. I'll see you then. And thanks for the support.